We begin our descent tonight, slowly, deeply, toward the cold, hard heart of an enduring mystery. Let's settle our minds on the small, unassuming silhouette of Oak Island, a place just off the foggy coastline of Nova Scotia, where whispering pines meet the relentless, rhythmic sigh of the North Atlantic. It's a quiet, secretive location that holds within its bedrock one of history's most baffling, persistent, and wet enigmas. The Money Pit, this vertical shaft, a work of human design, has swallowed fortunes, consumed lifetimes, and fiercely guarded a secret for over 2 centuries. So, let the sounds of your world fade now, let the light dim, and imagine instead the heavy, persistent layer of mist that perpetually blankets this tiny island. It's a chilling, damp fog that moves with the slow, deliberate pace of the sea itself, clinging to the needles of the ancient oak trees that give the island its name. We are going back to the beginning, to the year 1795. The island was nearly deserted then, a wild, overgrown patch of land whose only permanent inhabitants were the persistent, quiet waves breaking softly on the shore. This silence was broken one day by the curiosity of 3 young men, Daniel McGinnis, John Smith, and Anthony Vaughan. These local teenagers' attention was drawn not by a rumor, but by a very specific, unsettling sight, a circular depression, almost perfectly symmetrical, in the ground near the eastern end of the island. This depression was surrounded by the unmistakable evidence of human effort. The branches of a large, old oak had been cleanly sawn off, a sign that heavy rigging had once been established above the spot. It was a clear, silent marker that something important, something deliberately hidden, lay beneath the surface. We can visualize young McGinnis, the first to approach, pushing aside the thick, wet undergrowth, feeling the slight, unnatural dip in the earth. It was a dip that seemed to beckon them downward, prompting the initial, simple thought: treasure. That one word has since become synonymous with this tiny piece of land, setting in motion a search that has continued without a definitive answer through 200 years of technology, speculation, and failure. This failure only deepens the mystery and the persistent, quiet pull of the pit itself. We watch the 3 boys, armed only with enthusiasm, shovels, and the primal hope of finding pirate gold, begin their first dig. It's a rhythmic, repetitive motion of spade into soft earth, a sound that we will now let become the gentle, constant metronome for your own descent into sleep. The soft scrape of metal against soil, the low thud of loosened earth, a natural, calming, ancient rhythm of human labor that is profoundly restful. As they dig, they discover the first layer of the mystery. It's not a natural feature, but a perfectly engineered construction. At a depth of just 2 feet, they strike a layer of neatly laid, flat flagstones. These stones must have been imported and placed there to conceal the initial entry point. It's a clear sign that the hole was not a natural sinkhole, but a purposeful pit, dug by hands long ago. This realization replaces their initial boyish excitement with a growing, thrilling sense of dread and awe. It's a perfect, quiet balance between hope and fear that holds our attention, keeping us gently tethered to the slow, steady progress of the story. The rhythmic digging continues downward, passing through the cold, damp earth, until at a depth of 10 feet, the shovels hit wood. It's a layer of thick, closely laid oak logs, spanning the diameter of the pit, carefully cut and perfectly fitted into the sides of the shaft. This platform was placed there to support the pit-esque structure and to mark a stage in the construction. It required hours of careful removal, each log heavy with the accumulated moisture of decades, creating a smell of deep, wet wood and cold, mineralite earth that we can now absorb as the scent of deep sleep itself, a grounding, earthy aroma that settles the mind. This pattern repeats itself with a chilling, clockwork precision. A rhythmic cycle of digging, striking wood, clearing the platform, and resuming the descent. 20 feet yields another platform of logs, followed by another at 30 feet, then 40, 50, 60, 70, and 80 feet. A progression of 9 identical, perfectly engineered layers, all protected by layers of putty and heavy clay to prevent the ingress of water and soil. This indicates a level of dedication, engineering skill, and vast, concealed wealth that goes far beyond any simple pirate cache. It suggests instead a conspiracy of knowledge, perhaps a royal treasury or a secret society. This repetition, this perfect, predictable pattern of dig, strike, clear, repeat, becomes the calming mantra of our sleep story. Each 10-foot interval is a predictable step down, a further withdrawal from the surface world and into the silent, contained darkness of the pit. It's a rhythm that guarantees your journey downward will be just as smooth and predictable, guiding your brainwave patterns toward the slow, gentle frequency of delta sleep. As the boys near the 100-foot mark, exhausted but fueled by the persistent mystery, they make their most crucial, most tantalizing, and most permanent discovery. At a depth of 93 feet, they encounter a flat stone slab, approximately 3 feet long and 1 foot wide. This stone has since vanished, but according to the original accounts, it bore an inscription carved deep into its surface. It was a coded message, translated over a century later by a language professor as 40 feet below, 2 million pounds lie buried. This message transformed the simple hole in the ground into the globally recognized money pit, a promise of unimaginable wealth guarded by a cryptic inscription. We visualize the scene now. The flickering light of a single lantern casting long dancing shadows on the muddy walls of the pit, illuminating the worried, excited faces of the 3 young men as they stared down at the flat stone. The weight of that message, the promise of the 2 million pounds, settles upon their shoulders. It's a burden of hope and obsession that would pass to every subsequent generation of searchers. This persistent, quiet obsession is something we can now transform into the deep, quiet focus of our own rest. Let the vast cold emptiness of the pit become the container for all our own stray thoughts, replacing them with the mesmerizing rhythmic memory of the spade's soft scrape, the log's heavy thud, and the deep pervasive smell of wet earth. Feel the air grow cooler, denser, and stiller with every imagined foot of descent. Know that the mystery persists, the treasure remains hidden, and our only task is to follow this rhythmic, quiet narrative to the deepest, most undisturbed level of rest. Settle into the perfect, predictable pattern established by those ancient, unknown engineers of the money pit. Pattern that guarantees the continuity of the story and the safety of your sleep as we await the arrival of the cold, relentless sea. The discovery of the inscribed stone and the staggering depth of the wooden platforms instantly elevated the money pit from a local curiosity to a significant endeavor. It attracted the attention of serious investors who understood that this was no simple hole, but a masterpiece of pre-industrial engineering. This was a structure designed not merely to hide something, but to protect it from ever being found. And so, we move forward to 1803 and the formation of the Truro Company, the first organized expedition to take up the search. This was a group fueled by the 90-foot stone's promise, ready to commit real capital and more extensive resources than the 3 young men could ever muster. Picture the scene. The small, quiet island, transformed by the crew's arrival. The heavy timbers of a windlass and a large block and tackle are hauled into place above the pit, replacing the simple rope and bucket with mechanical leverage, a clear sign of the escalating scale of ambition. Yet despite their superior organization, the basic rhythm of the work remained the same. Dig, haul, clear, descend. It was a continuous, focused effort that lasted 4 weeks as they meticulously cleared the pit down to the level of the famous stone. They then continued, excited and expectant, past the 90-foot mark, where the encoded treasure supposedly lay just 40 feet deeper. This tantalizing closeness drove the men forward through the cold, dark mud. As they reached the 98-foot level, just below where the stone had rested, the reality of the engineer's genius suddenly, dramatically asserted itself. The smooth rhythm of the excavation was broken by a chilling, unforgettable Eventon instant that changed the course of the Oak Island mystery forever. They struck water. Not just seepage, not just ground moisture, but a massive, sudden, and entirely unexpected inrush of cold, black Atlantic seawater. The torrent was so powerful it surged up the shaft, rising with alarming speed, instantly filling the pit from the bottom up. It rose to the 33-foot level, a depth that corresponds perfectly to the heighted mark of the surrounding ocean. This was a clear, horrifying demonstration that the mysterious builders had not just dug a hole. They had connected it to the sea through a sophisticated network of booby-trapped flood tunnels, a calculated, defensive system designed to defeat any searcher who got too close. The immense power of the ocean now stood as the vigilant, permanent guardian of the hidden treasure. The Truro Company, and every subsequent searcher, was forced to realize that they were no longer simply digging a hole. They were fighting a war against the sea itself, an enemy whose resources were literally endless. The Truro Company, baffled but undeterred, spent weeks attempting to bail out the pit. It was a Sisyphean effort, using buckets and ropes, a slow, manual rhythm that yielded no progress. The water level remained stubbornly at the 33-foot mark, refilling as fast as they could empty it. This was a sign that the flood tunnel was a powerful, active link to the sea, requiring a complete change in strategy. It forced the searchers to look not down, but out, towards the island's shorelines. The exhausted men turned their attention to the nearby Smith's Cove, a small, secluded bay on the island's north side. It was here that John Smith had previously identified a strange, unnatural feature, a beach that had been entirely reconstructed. It was covered in a massive, interwoven platform of coconut fiber and eelgrass, materials not native to Nova Scotia. This platform, placed beneath the surface of the sand, acted as an advanced filtering drainage system to hide the inlets of the flood tunnels. It was a testament to the global reach and obsessive secrecy of the builders, suggesting the mystery was connected to the trade routes of the tropical world, perhaps the West Indies or even Central America. The sheer scale of the deception, the hidden platform beneath the sand, the perfectly layered platforms in the pit, the subterranean flood tunnels connecting everything to the tide-all of it, points to a level of resources and organization that could only belong to a national navy, a secret society, or a deposed monarchy. This transforms the treasure from simple gold bars into something far more significant. Could it be the crown jewels of France? The lost manuscripts of Francis Bacon, or even the sacred relics of the Knights Templar? These possibilities had a deep, historical resonance to the cold, wet silence of the pit. The profound complexity, the sheer depth of the conspiracy, it replaces the need to solve anything with a quiet, appreciative wonder for the scale of the mystery itself. The water, the relentless guardian, continues its patient, rhythmic vigil over the legendary treasure, ensuring that the secret of the pit remains safely locked away, deep beneath the surface of the quiet, secretive island. The Truro Company had to finally admit defeat, leaving the pit to flood entirely, to wait for the next generation of dreamers and engineers to take up the shovel, surrendering to the vast, cold, enveloping silence of the Atlantic. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysteries of Oak Island, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest enigmas. We'll see you in the next video. Following the failure of the Truro Company, the money pit lay dormant and flooded for decades, a watery tomb for the hopes of the first searchers awaiting the next wave of persistent dreamers who would inevitably be drawn to the island's haunting promise. We now jump ahead to 1849, witnessing the formation of the Old Gold Salvage Company. This was a group whose ambition was matched only by the technological advancements of the era. They were the first to bring a steam-driven pump and auger drilling equipment to the island, introducing a new sound to the search. Imagine the persistent, rhythmic thrum of industrial machinery replacing the quiet, manual labor of the past. It's a sound of heavy, focused momentum. We can now integrate this sound into our soundscape of rest. Let the deep, steady pulse of the steam engine act as a powerful, tireless anchor for our attention. The Old Gold Salvage Company recognized the futility of bailing out the pit itself. Their strategy was to penetrate the secret area by drilling alongside it, sinking exploratory boreholes in the immediate vicinity of the original shaft. They hoped to intersect the treasure vault, or the flood tunnel system, from the CDOT calculated lateral approach that required a different kind of precision and focus. We can borrow this focus for our own peaceful rest. Let the image of the drill biting slowly, steadily into the dark, cold earth become a metaphor for our own gentle, relentless journey into deep sleep, penetrating the shallow anxieties of the surface mind and seeking the deep, undisturbed core of unconscious rest. As the heavy iron drill bit descended, the reports from the driller were both exhilarating and maddeningly vague. They chronicled a descent through the waterlogged earth until, at approximately 98 feet, the drill encountered the familiar, dense resistance of a wooden platform. This confirmed the layers were still intact below the waterline, a reassuring sign that the pit's structure was sound. But then came the truly tantalizing discovery that elevated the mystery to a whole new level of certainty. When the drill pushed past the wooden platform, it fell into a voidous space about 12 inches high. This was followed by a layer described as loose metal or wood chips, consistent with the debris of a broken lockbox or the shrapnel of a decayed chest. Then, at about 105 feet, the drill bit encountered a final, extremely hard, dense, and resisting object, forcing the drill to stop. When the bit was withdrawn, the men rushed to examine the evidence caught in the grooves of the drill head. They found several gold chain links, a few pieces of brass or copper, and, most famously, a small fragment of parchment bearing the traces of script written in India ink. This discovery sent a shockwave of certainty through the team. The treasure was real. It had been touched, and it lay just a few feet deeper. It was a definitive moment of proof that only fueled the obsession to an even greater height. Let's hold that image of the small, wet fragment of parchment a tangible, fragile evidence of the pit's secret. It's a piece of paper that speaks of ancient language and hidden documents, a quiet symbol of history's persistent refusal to surrender its secrets. Allow the deep, rhythmic chug of the steam pump, working tirelessly in the background, to become the sound of pure, unyielding persistence. It's a mechanical guarantee of effort that requires nothing from us but silent observation and deep relaxation. And yet, despite this conclusive proof, the sea remained the implacable, undefeated guardian. Every subsequent attempt to dig directly to the 105-foot level or to bypass the flood tunnels was met with immediate, overwhelming failure. This often resulted in the catastrophic collapse of the original pit, the earth giving way under the pressure, the water surging up and carrying away months of effort. The searchers were forced to recognize that the money pit was less a shaft and more a complex, multifaceted engineering system designed to be a one-way path, accessible only by its builders. We now turn our focus to the tireless, cold work done at Smith's Cove, the only place where the searchers could directly confront the flood system. They worked primarily at low tide, when the water momentarily receded, allowing the men to dig a series of trenches and cofferdams. They battled the clock of the rising tide to expose the subtle, unnatural features of the beach. Here, they confirmed the existence of the man-made coconut fiber matting and located 5 carefully disguised box drains. These were the actual, engineered inlets of the flood tunnels, each one leading directly beneath the island and into the money pit area. This discovery confirmed the builder's profound genius and the full extent of the booby-trapper genius that demanded respect and a quiet, persistent strategy to defeat, a strategy that would occupy generations to come. As you listen to the rhythmic pulse of the machinery and the soft, distant lapping of the ocean water against the Noack's timber drains at Smith's Cove, let the deep, unhurried persistence of the search become your own internal state, a quiet, unwavering commitment to the rest you deserve. A rest as deep and as permanent as the bedrock beneath Oak Island, a place where the secrets of the past are held fast by the relentless, cold embrace of the sea, and where the sound of the deep earth machinery, steady and strong, guarantees a constant, rhythmic flow that pulls us safely into the deepest stages of sleep. Thank you for joining this journey tonight. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more tales of history and rest. Sweet dreams. As the mid-19th century unfolded, the relentless march of technological innovation brought a new wave of ambition to Oak Island. The mystery of the money pit, with its whispered promises of untold riches, was about to face its most formidable challenger yet. In 1861, the Halifax Company was formed, a syndicate defined not by mere curiosity, but by sheer industrial might and unwavering determination. They were ready to commit heavy machinery to the task, transforming the quiet, wind-swept island into a theater of mechanical effort. The tranquil soundscape of the island was shattered, replaced by the relentless churning of powerful steam pumps and the deep, percussive rhythm of sinking casing. Imagine these massive metal cylinders, designed to be driven deep into the soft, waterlogged soil, acting as protective shields for the workers below, a bulwark against the ever-present threat of collapse. It was a battle of modern engineering against an ancient, unseen architect. Yet, for all their power and innovation, the Halifax Company was about to learn a humbling lesson. The relentless genius of the original builders proved superior once again. Catastrophe struck. A massive, engineered cavern occurred, the earth and timber supports giving way in a torrent of mud and debris, the bottom of the original pit. That tantalizing zone below 100 feet, where the gold chain and parchment had first been glimpsed, was lost entirely. It sank into an even deeper, unknown void, swallowed by the island itself. This wasn't just a setback. It was a devastating demonstration of the money pit's dynamic, defensive nature. It was as if the pit itself was alive, actively resisting discovery, a puzzle that fought back. Let's just pause and absorb the contained energy of this struggle. Imagine the deep, rhythmic thrum of those struggling pumps, a constant mechanical heartbeat echoing across the island. Let that sound become a representation of an external struggle, a powerful force working outside of you, allowing it to release you from your own internal tensions. As you listen, feel yourself sinking further into a state of rest, appreciating the sheer scale of the engineering feat required to defeat the sea. It was a challenge that 19th century technology could fully overcome. This disaster marked the beginning of the most dramatic and tragic period of the search. Undeterred, the company shifted its strategy to continuous, deep drilling, focusing on the area where they believed the vault had fallen. This was a period of unrelenting effort, a testament to human persistence, but it came at a terrible cost. It was during this phase that the island claimed its first confirmed fatality, a life lost to the pit's unforgiving nature. It was a stark, solemn reminder that this was no mere treasure hunt. It was a serious, dangerous commitment that demanded the ultimate sacrifice, adding a profound gravity to the enduring mystery and the power of the pit's supposed curse. The core objective of the Halifax Company remained clear: to definitively locate the main treasure vault, which they hypothesized now lay somewhere between 150 and 160 feet deep. For years, the drilling continued, a slow, methodical probing into the island's secrets. Then, in 1897, their persistence paid off. An exploratory drilling operation yielded the next major revelation. It was a discovery that confirmed the vault's location but added yet another layer of frustrating complexity to the puzzle. Picture the scene. The drill bit, spinning its way down, passes through layers of familiar clay and stone. Then, at 155 feet, it strikes something different, a layer of metallic resistance. The drill pushes through, entering another distinct void, an empty space deep beneath the earth. Then, at 160 feet, the driller feels a new sensation through the steel rod. The bit strikes something hard, wooden, and hollow. The report was electrifying. It suggested a large wooden chest, or perhaps the ceiling of the treasure vault itself. They had found it. But what came up from that hole is what truly cemented this chapter in the Oak Island legend. The most famous, though often debated, account from this drilling operation speaks of 4 distinct items, retrieved from the drill cuttings. First, fibers of wood, confirming the wooden structure below. Then, fragments of a strange, concrete-like material. Something not native to the island. Next, tantalizingly, traces of gold, shimmering in the muck. And most significantly, a small, dark object tentatively identified as a piece of sheepskin parchment. Perhaps a fragment of the very document found and lost decades earlier. It was also during this very drilling that one of the most persistent legends of the pit was either born or finally confirmed. The story goes that as the drill encountered that large, hard object, it snagged something. When brought to the surface, the drill bit was said to hold a tiny, metallic link, a piece of the elusive gold chain. It was a moment of profound, maddening closeness. They had physically touched the treasure. The obsession intensified to a fever pitch. They knew they had found it. The company was certain they had pinpointed the treasure's location, yet they were utterly powerless to reach it. Every subsequent attempt to sink a shaft directly down to that target depth was met with the same implacable enemy, the water. It rushed in, destroying their work, collapsing their tunnels, and guarding the secret. It was a perpetual, heartbreaking cycle of touch and retreat, a rhythm of near success and total failure that came to define the entire history of the search. Now, Let this rhythmic, maddening pattern lull you into a state of deep calm. The pulse of near successes and complete failures becomes a constant, hypnotic beat in the background of your mind. Allow the sounds of that deep earth struggle, the grinding of the drill, the sucking of the pumps, the distant, muffled roar of the Atlantic to wash over you. Feel them smoothing out your own internal anxieties, replacing them with a sense of an immense, quiet, external effort. You can rest peacefully, undisturbed, knowing that for now, the secret remains safe, protected by the cold, dense soil and the relentless, rhythmic pressure of the sea. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of Oak Island. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the world Asgrade's mysteries. Sleep well. The 20th century saw the mystery of Oak Island become less a local endeavor and more a globally recognized historical puzzle, due in large part to the arrival and decades-long persistence of Daniel C. Blankenship, a formidable, determined figure who first came to the island in the late 1960s, driven by an article in Reader's Digest, quickly becoming synonymous with the relentless, unyielding spirit of the search, committing his entire life and fortune to unraveling the secrets of the pit. And we focus on the transition from the crude, steam-driven efforts of the 19th century to the more robust, scientific, yet equally frustrated searches of the modern era, beginning with the formation of Triton Alliance, the company Blankenship co-founded, bringing sophisticated geophysical testing and heavy excavation equipment to the island on an unprecedented scale, transforming the landscape of the eastern end of the island into a confusing, sprawling network of shafts, bores, and trenches, each one a testament to the unyielding belief in the vast, hidden treasure. And we can now visualize the entire island through the lens of Blankenship's relentless vision. Seeing the original money pit is just one piece of a much larger coordinated system, with his attention focused not just on the main shaft, but on a massive subterranean cavern that he hypothesized lay somewhere between 180 and 240 feet below the surface, a cavern that could contain the ultimate treasure vault, a secret chamber sealed off from the ravages of the ocean. And the most iconic achievement of Blankenship's era was the sinking of Shaft 10X. In the early 1970s, a massive, 36-inch diameter borehole drilled to a depth of 237 feet, located slightly southeast of the original money pit, a feat of drilling and engineering that went far beyond anything previously attempted. And as the camera lowered into the narrow, dark cylinder descended into the black, water-filled shaft, it captured images that immediately became the cornerstone of the island's modern mythology. Fuzzy water-obscured photographs and videos showing what appeared to be man-made objects, including wooden beams, tools, and most controversially, the faint shimmering image of what many claimed was a severed hand in a treasure chest, or perhaps a human body lying prone within a small cavern, a single haunting image that solidified the belief that the pit held not just gold but historical secrets and perhaps even a chilling, centuries-old tragedy, a visual enigma that kept the obsession alive for decades, a mesmerizing, blurry, underwater secret that we now let swim slowly behind our closed eyelids, distracting us gently from any surface tension, pulling us deeper into the soft, comforting darkness of the night and the relentless rhythmic drilling and pumping. Associated Wheat 10X continued for years, generating a constant background hum of industry on the quiet island, a deep, persistent sound that we now use as a continuous rhythmic anchor for our sleep, sound of dedicated effort that requires nothing from us but silent rest, knowing that the Blankenship team, with their heavy equipment and tireless commitment, were fighting a battle of endurance against the relentless cold forces of the earth and the sea. And we consider the sheer physical labor and expense involved, the continuous operation of the pumps fighting the constant influx of Atlantic seawater, the sinking and retrieval of massive metal casings, the endless process of coring and sludging, pulling up samples of the dark cold earth in search of evidence, a single piece of exotic wood, a fragment of metal, a smear of gold, each sample carefully documented and analyzed, adding to the vast confusing archive of evidence that both proved the existence of the complex and denied access to its core, a maddening duality that is the essence of the Oak Island curse, a perpetual cycle of proof without possession that we now observe from a safe, detached distance, letting the rhythmic persistence of the work become a comforting, external beat, a guarantee of continuity that allows our own internal systems to shut down, and surrender to the deep, heavy demands of sleep, feeling the cold, damp Nova Scotia air settle around us, listening to the vast, cold silence of the deep earth that swallowed the work of Blankenship and his crew and now awaits the next generation of searchers to take. Up the shovel and the drill, continuing the rhythmic, repetitive saga of the world, is the most famous and most resistant treasure hunt. Our final major shift in the ongoing Oak Island saga brings us to the contemporary era marked by the arrival of the Lagina, brothers Rick and Marty Lagina, who fueled by a lifelong fascination and possessing the necessary resources and media savvy, bought a majority stake in the mysterious site and transformed the search into a televised obsession. A process that has introduced the continuous, mechanized grind and churn of 21st century heavy construction to the island's landscape, a sound that we can now interpret as the tireless rhythm of modern persistence, a sound that ensures continuous flow and profound rest. And we focus on the current method of attack, which recognizes that the original money pit is too unstable to enter, forcing the search to move entirely to a complex grid of adjacent large-diameter shafts, primarily known by their geological designations, the H-series and C-series. Boreholes. Vast vertical cylinders drilled to extreme depths, some reaching well over 200 feet. All designed to investigate the anomalies identified by sophisticated seismic and ground-penetrating radar GPR surveys, creating a precise, digital map of the Earth. Beneath the legendary site, a detailed blueprint of the invisible defenses that have thwarted 2 centuries of effort, and we visualize the island now dominated by the towering steel gap, the massive drilling rigs, and the constant movement of excavators and haul trucks. Machinery that operates with a deep, focused, repetitive rhythm, a metallic pulse that is both loud and hypnotic, replacing the soft, manual scrape of the original shovels with the powerful, unyielding thrust of modern hydraulic drills, a rhythm we now fully adopt for our sleep, knowing that this tireless, external machine is working on our behalf, ensuring the narrative flows and the deep, cold mystery remains contained and continuous, allowing us to relax completely. And the most dramatic focus of the modern search has been the investigation of the supposed money pit cluster and the tantalizing, deep anomaly known as the head and shaft, or a deeper hole. A spot where drilling consistently reveals layers of non-native materials, including fragments of metal, wood, leather, and even human bone, adding a chilling, tangible element of risk and tragedy to the otherwise purely historical pursuit. And the constant battle with the sea continues, forcing the team to deploy massive, interlocking cofferdams and steel well casings, vast engineering projects designed to temporarily push back the relentless Atlantic, allowing workers brief, protected access to the flood tunnels in Smith's Cove and the deep subterranean chambers, efforts that are punctuated by the continuous, rhythmic sound of the dewatering pumps, a sound of mechanical vigilance pulling millions of gallons of cold seawater back into the ocean, fighting a battle that never truly ends, but whose relentless effort creates a perfect, predictable auditory backdrop for deep, uninterrupted sleep. And we consider the vast speculative theories that the Laginas and their team are investigating, not just the pirate gold, but the possibility that the pit holds the lost manuscripts of William Shakespeare, which some believe were smuggled to the New World by philosopher Francis Bacon, or the Holy Grail and other Christian relics brought over by the Knights Templar, a possibility supported by the discovery of strange, non-native features like the lead cross found years ago on the island's shores, a small, tangible artifact that speaks of medieval European origins and deep, secretive purpose. And we allow the rhythmic repetition of the search, the drill's deep bite, the pump's steady thrum, the crane's slow hoist-do become a powerful, continuous wave of sound that carries us further away from wakefulness, a sound of unyielding persistence that guarantees the story, and the soothing rhythm will continue without fail, deep into the night, as we drift down, down, down into the cold, damp, silent layers of the earth, settling our minds on the vast, cold pressure of the Atlantic that has failed to defeat the modern efforts, but continues its silent, rhythmic patrol, standing eternal guard over the most persistent, most expensive, and most stubbornly unsolved puzzle in history. As we settle into the final, deepest stages of our rest, let the sounds of the Oak Island search guide you. Imagine the deep, mechanized drone of the pumps, the soft, rhythmic lapping of ocean water against the cofferdam walls, and the occasional, distant clang of steel on steel. Allow these persistent sounds to become the anchor that pulls you into the profound quietude of the deepest sleep. Let your focus shift away from physical efforts and into the endless, soothing realm of speculation and enduring mystery. This is the true, permanent treasure of the island, the one that has captured imaginations for centuries. We will gently cycle through the most compelling theories about the builders and what they hid, knowing that the only certainty is the ingenious, unbreakable construction of the pit itself. It's a defense system that has outlasted every company, every technology, and every hopeful investor. It stands as a silent, powerful testament to the builder's purpose, a purpose so important it demanded eternal vigilance. First, we envision the Knights Templar theory. It suggests that the pit was built to house the vast, priceless treasures and sacred artifacts the Templars amassed before their official disbandment in the 14th century. Perhaps it holds the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, or secret documents detailing the true history of Christ, all smuggled across the Atlantic long before Columbus. This theory is supported by the profound level of mathematical and astronomical alignment required to build the booby trap. It suggests a deep, ancient knowledge of geometry and engineering that transcends simple pirate lore, lending the mystery a spiritual and historical weight that resonates in the deep silence of the night. Feel the weight of this ancient secret as you sink deeper into comfort. Next, we consider the royal treasure theory. This is perhaps the most plausible in terms of available resources and motive. It proposes that the pit holds the missing French crown jewels, secreted away during the French Revolution, or a massive Spanish or British war chest, hidden to fund a future conflict. The sheer volume of material used in the pit's construction, the vast quantities of clay, the heavy oak platforms, the miles of flood, tunnels all point to the state-level resources of a national treasury, not a small band of pirates. That the image of ancient, glittering crowns and priceless jewels, safely encased and sealed away beneath 200 feet of cold earth and pressurized seawater, become the final, shimmering image that fades slowly into the darkness of your rest. It's a quiet, peaceful thought that all the world's most coveted wealth is contained, safe and silent, requiring nothing from you but deep, uninterrupted sleep. And we cannot ignore the Francis Bacon theory. This is the tantalizing possibility that the pit is a literary vault, containing the original, signed manuscripts of William Shakespeare's plays, along with documents proving that Bacon himself was the true author. Imagine it. A vast, explosive literary secret that would rewrite the history of the English language. A beautiful, intellectual treasure, guarded not by cannons or pirates, but by a cunning, centuries-old drainage system. Allow the rhythmic flow of this search narrative to replace any internal dialogue. Let it be replaced with a deep, reassuring knowledge of the vast, unsolved mysteries that continue to turn over, slowly and rhythmically, in the deep earth. They demand nothing but your peaceful surrender to the flow of the night. Let the ultimate fate of the money pit too remain a secret, a symbol of endless human persistence against the vast, cold genius of the past become the final comforting truth that guides you fully and completely into the deepest, most restorative sleep. You are surrounded by the persistent, soft, protective sounds of the sea and the earth, knowing that the mystery remains and the search continues, rhythmically and without end. This ensures the flow of your rest is just as continuous and perfectly safe. Drift now into the quiet mystery, into deep and peaceful sleep. The story of Amelia Earhart is not merely a tale of vanishing, but a deep, long inquiry into the fortitude of the human spirit, a quiet meditation upon the boundless blue of the uncharted world and the delicate, mechanical audacity required to traverse it. She stands, in the memory of the 1930s, as the very embodiment of the golden age of flight, a luminous and composed figure whose courage was matched only by her almost ethereal grace. Her ambition was an epical force, seeking the longest possible meridian, the great, sweeping arc around the equator of this earth. A journey so profound in its scope that it seemed to belong less to the realm of engineering, and more to the grand narratives of classical myth, her life, from its tentative Midwestern beginnings to its crescendo among the clouds, was a steady, onward march toward a destiny defined by altitude and distance, insistent rejection of the terrestrial limits placed upon women of her time. She was an adventuress whose pale, steady eyes seemed always focused upon the distant curvature of the horizon, carrying within them the unspoken certainty of a destination not yet seen by mortal eyes. And the silver vessel that was to carry her across the ultimate expanse was the Lockheed Electra 10E, a twin-engined paragon of aeronautical design, a machine of profound beauty and unforgiving complexity. The Electra, bearing the registry NR16020, was meticulously prepared, stripped of all non-essential accoutrements, to accommodate the vast internal reservoirs of fuel that swelled its capacity to the absolute limits of its structural integrity, transforming it from a passenger transport into a single, high-stakes instrument of global ambition. Its engines, powerful and reliable, would be required to sing a tireless, monotonous anthem for the better part of 30 consecutive hours over the loneliest waters on the planet. A sustained test of man, machine, and fate, the final, fateful leg of this circumnavigation was a brutal challenge of pure geometry. The crossing from the steamy, primitive outpost of Le New Guinea to the minuscule, almost mythical dot in the central Pacific, known as Howland Island, a distance of approximately 150 nautical miles, a vast, unyielding canvas of water where the nearest reliable sanctuary was always behind them, and the target ahead was little more than a whisper of sand and coral barely 10 feet above the restless sea. To find this target required a navigator of singular skill, a man whose life had been dedicated to the silent, unchanging lexicon of the stars and the meticulous arithmetic of dead reckoning, and that man was Fred Noonan, Amelia's silent partner in this ultimate aerial gamble, a figure whose weathered countenance and precise, profound knowledge of the sea and air charts provided the essential anchor to Amelia's daring vision. Noonan's world was one of celestial fixations and meticulous chronometers of translating the high cold geometry of the heavens into a terrestrial position with nothing more than a brass instrument in a steady hand. His was a knowledge honed over years of piloting Pan American's giant flying boats across the vast featureless stretches of the Pacific. He understood the currents of the air and the capricious nature of magnetic variation with an intimacy that few of his contemporaries could claim, and his presence on the Electra was the single most critical safeguard against the unfathomable emptiness they were about to confront. Their strategy for the approach to Howland Island was a logistical marvel, relying upon the steadfast assistance of the United States Coast Guard cutter, which was to be positioned precisely off the low-lying island. The Itasco was intended to be more than a refuge. She was to be their terrestrial beacon, their radio homing station, emitting a continuous, guiding pulse into the Pacific ether, a thread of sound meant to lead the silver aircraft through the final, crucial hours of dawn and dow. The coordination required an almost military precision in timing and frequency allocation. A complex radio handshake between the advanced high-frequency apparatus on the Electra and the medium-frequency direction gear aboard the cutter. But the wireless communication of the 1930s was a moody, unpredictable science, susceptible to the sudden eruptions of tropical static, the shifting ionosphere, and the unavoidable limitations of line-of-sight transmission over the curved surface of the Earth. Problems that, in hindsight, would gather like silent, unseen storm clouds around their final hours. The transmission was followed by a moment of intense, desperate silence, broken only by the Itasca's continuous, booming call, its radio beacon now shouting into the empty air, trying to pull the lost aircraft back with sheer volume. The final message, fragmented and deeply unsettling, came around 8:43 GMT. A sound that trailed off into the deep, unforgiving silence of the Pacific. It was a garbled, broken transmission, containing the terrifying phrase, "We are on the line 157 to 337, running north and south. Double." Quotes the final words suggested a last, desperate, methodical pattern search, flying up and down the line of position in a final, frantic attempt to catch a visual glimpse of the island or the ship, but the signal was weak, fading, and then gone, replaced by the profound, vast indifference of the Pacific's natural soundscape, The sound had ceased, and the true silence began. A silence so total that the world knew, with a chilling certainty, that the quest for Howland Island had ended. The immense, persistent silence that followed the last garbled radio transmission was, in itself, a message of finality. But it was a silence immediately filled by the rising sound of global anxiety and the frantic, coordinated efforts of the United States government. The disappearance of a figure of Amelia's stature was not merely a private tragedy but a public catastrophe, demanding an immediate and sustained response. The United States Navy and Coast Guard mobilized resources on a scale unprecedented for a search and rescue mission, transforming the vast, empty quadrant of the Central Pacific into a temporary, bustling theater of military operation. The Coast Guard cutter Itasca, having been the last to hear the Electra's voice, was immediately tasked with the primary role. Its crew, having listened in helpless agony to the final, fading calls, now turned their frustration into a desperate, methodical grid search around the precise coordinates of Howland Island, using the final line of position provided by Noonan as their only reliable clue. The powerful battleship Colorado was dispatched from Pearl Harbor, its arrival bringing a massive escalation of capability. The ship's bulk and resources allowed for sustained operations over a wide area, its own radio equipment becoming the new, more powerful voice shouting into the silence, and its complement of aircraft of O3U3. Float planes were quickly launched, taking to the air in organized, overlapping patterns to scan the sea below. The search was not a random exploration, but a mathematically driven enterprise, based on the creeping line search methodology, where vessels and aircraft moved along parallel tracks, systematically covering a defined area, ensuring that every square mile of the ocean's surface was scrutinized. The initial search by the Itasca and the Colorado covered over 250,000 square miles of the Pacific, a staggering expanse of water searched with meticulous, but ultimately fruitless, determination. The days stretched into a week, then two, the initial urgency replaced by a deepening sense of grim reality. The searchers were looking not for a lost aircraft, but for the impossible, the slender, ephemeral proof of a forced landing upon the endless sea. The official search was called off after 16 days, a period of unrelenting effort that represented the largest, most expensive air-sea search in history up to that point, confirming the grim conclusion that the Electra and its crew had succumbed to the immense, indifferent power of the Pacific. The legacy of Amelia Earhart, even in its state of profound and unsolved mystery, became something far greater than her arrival or her departure. It was transformed into a universal narrative, a story of ambition and disappearance that transcends the mere facts of the flight. The failure to find any definitive wreckage, no wing fragments, no fuselage, no life raft, no recognizable piece of the meticulously prepared aircraft became, in itself, the most compelling clue. Suggesting a scenario other than a catastrophic high-speed crash, the absence of evidence became the evidence, suggesting either a clean, sinking impact or a landing upon a remote, unsearched patch of land or reef. The profound silence of the Pacific, which had swallowed the Electra, now resonated across the world, ensuring that the disappearance of Amelia Earhart would remain not an answer, but an eternal, unyielding question. The meticulous forensic analysis that followed the search revealed a confluence of technical errors and decisions that doomed the final approach, including the time synchronization error and the absence of the direction-finding loop antenna on the Electra. The Nikomaroro theory gained traction not through radio signals, but through the haunting absence of wreckage and the known fact of Noonan's navigational background. The theory posited that after failing to find Howland, the crew, knowing their fuel was spent, would have made a desperate, deliberate turn to search for any landmass along their trajectory. And Nikomaroro, though far off their initial course, lay within the region of probable drift and search radius, offering the only possible safe landing site in that quadrant. This theory was later lent credence by the discovery of an old photograph taken for months after the disappearance, showing what appeared to be the landing gear of an aircraft resting on the edge of the Nikomaroro Reef. A ghostly, half-submerged suggestion of the Electra's presence. The disappearance solidified her legend with an immutable permanence that a safe landing, however triumphant, could never have achieved. A successful return would have been a historical event, but her vanishing was a mythic one, a transformation from a woman of flesh and blood to an indelible idea, an inquiry into the final limits of human courage in the face of the unknown. The search for the Electra has become the most enduring cold case in aviation history, an expensive, meticulous, and deeply emotional pursuit that continues into the present day. Her final flight, though ending in silence, paradoxically gave her a voice that resonates louder than any radio signal, a call to the boundless possibilities that lie just beyond the horizon of the known world. And as the decades pass, the story of Amelia Earhart settles into its final, permanent place in the human saga, a shimmering, elusive tale of a silver airplane to brave souls and the immense vast geometry of the Pacific, a story that gently lulls the mind to rest with the quiet, soothing certainty that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved, perfect in their silent, eternal suspension between the earth and the endless, beckoning sky, and with that final, gentle thought, the vastness of the Pacific Ocean, which holds the secret of the silver airplane, seems to stretch out, silent and serene, beneath the pale, distant stars, inviting the mind to settle deeper and deeper into a place of profound rest and absolute quietude. As the endless ocean waves move in their rhythmic, soothing patterns, pulling the world into a deep, gentle slumber, the rhythmic sound of the distant, tireless waves becomes a slow, steady pulse. A gentle metronome marking the time of the world and the deep, slow rhythm of the breath, and the mind, having followed the long, gentle journey of the silver airplane, and the two brave souls who flew it, now finds itself suspended, silent and weightless, in a profound, deep tranquility, far away from the complexities of the world, safe in the immense, quiet certainty of the earth, settling down into a deep, peaceful sleep, a deep, restorative sleep that is as vast and as quiet as the ancient ocean itself, carrying the mind gently toward a place of absolute rest, where the only sound is the soft, rhythmic hush of the incoming tide, pulling the spirit deeper and deeper into a complete and utter silence, a complete and utter peace. For the final, critical push, as the cold gray light of the second morning of the flight began to filter into the cockpit, their focus would narrow entirely upon the point of rendezvous, the knowledge that they were now within the theoretical range of Howland Island, their fuel now perilously low, the margin for error effectively non-existent. They would be searching for the Itasca's signal, the oral beacon that was meant to be their infallible guide. But the atmosphere, perhaps sensing the immense gravity of the moment, chose that hour to be particularly capricious. The very conditions that were meant to aid the radio navigation, the shifting patterns of the dawn light and the atmospheric layers, conspired instead to break the delicate link, creating a confusion of signals and static, a frustrating, invisible wall between the pilots in the sky and the crew waiting in the sea. The final chapter of their magnificent voyage was about to begin, not with a triumphant arrival, but with a silent, desperate question, the sky avast, indifferent witness to the final, harrowing calculus of time and distance. The Electra, now lighter, but running on the last of its reserves, was flying into the blinding promise of the sunrise, hoping for a miracle of sight or sound to break the profound silence of their final approach. The harrowing final hours before the disappearance were defined by a profound and subtle terror. It was not the sudden, dramatic crisis of a failing engine or a violent storm, but the slow, insidious failure of the systems designed to provide certainty, an erosion of navigational confidence that began with minor inconsistencies and swelled into a total vacuum of reliable data. They had flown for over 24 hours. The Electra had consumed its enormous reserve of fuel with a predictable, terrifying precision, and the mathematics now dictated that they must be within a tight window of error in the immediate vicinity of their target. The island, however, remained stubbornly invisible beneath them, a ghost in the vast blue theater of the Pacific dawn. The radio communication, their final and most crucial link to survival, had deteriorated into a frustrating, confusing crosstalk of broken phrases and agonizing static, a dialogue with disaster that was both desperate and strangely intimate, a final, fading plea for guidance. Amelia, her voice taut with the strain of hours of flight and rising anxiety, maintained her composure, her transmissions precise and professional. even as the gravity of their situation pressed in upon them. The psychological weight of flying beyond the point of reliable return would have been enormous. The knowledge that every minute of flight was now consuming the final, finite resource, and that the only remaining option was the miraculous emergence of land or the clear, guiding signal of the Coast Guard cutter. Amelia's final, coherent transmission spoke volumes, and their simple, professional clarity. KHAQQ. Calling. We must be on you, but cannot see you. But gas is running low. Been unable to reach you by radio. We are flying on line of position 157 to 337. The coordinates, the line of position, were Noonan's final, magnificent gift to the world. A testament to his skill even in the face of inevitable disaster. A mathematical description of the single, long line upon which the Electra was positioned, giving the searchers their only reliable piece of geographic truth. But even this line of position was a tragic ambiguity, an endless stripe on the map that could be hundreds of miles long. The hours of darkness were a profound test of trust Amelia. Flying purely by instruments guided by the numbers, and the subtle pressure of the controls relying entirely upon the periodic corrections called out by Noonan as he worked his careful celestial calculations. The world outside the cockpit windows was a uniform, silent, inky blackness, broken only by the cold, distant gleam of the Southern Cross, their only reliable guides in that unyielding void. The constant vibration of the airframe, the unchanging temperature, the absence of any terrestrial visual reference soul contributed to a strange, almost hypnotic state of existence, a separation from the rhythms of the earth that was both deeply isolating and profoundly focused. They were simply two souls in a machine suspended in the night, tracing an unseen line of ambition across the largest, emptiest ocean. The silence of the cockpit was occasionally broken by the static-laced attempts at wireless contact with the Itasca. Brief, frustrating exchanges that confirmed their presence, but often failed to establish a clear, usable directional fix. The limitations of the radio equipment became the most devastating variable in their unfolding drama. A cruel flaw in the very safety net they had constructed with such immense care and foresight. They were sailing a course determined by the stars, but unable to speak effectively to the single point of human contact designed to receive them. The dark hours of the final night were a testament to their immense endurance. Fred Noonan, working tirelessly in the dim cockpit light, converting angles and precise moments of time into positions on the chart, battling against the effects of wind drift and the inherent cumulative error of dead reckoning, knowing that the slightest deviation, left uncorrected, would be magnified across the vast distance, translating into an insurmountable error as dawn approached. Yet the challenge was not merely astronomical, but geopolitical and technological. The island, a slender strip of coral barely 2,000 yards long and a few hundred wide, had been recently cleared and partially colonized specifically to serve as this equatorial refueling stop. Its very existence on the map was a testament to the ambitions of the flight itself, a manufactured waypoint in the vast, empty quadrant of the Central Pacific. Noonan's flight plan relied on achieving a series of sun lines during the day and star fixes during the night, utilizing his bubble sextant and his precise Hamilton chronometer, which kept Greenwich Mean Time with almost fanatical accuracy. For every second of error in time translates to a quarter of a mile error in longitude on the Earth's surface, a terrifying variable when the destination is a speck in the ocean. The essential truth of their navigational dilemma was that the Electra carried no functioning direction-finding loop antenna, a critical piece of equipment that had been removed prior to the final leg to save weight, forcing them to rely entirely upon the receiving equipment of the Itasca to obtain a crucial directional bearing. This dependency created a fatal vulnerability, a single weak point in the safety chain that could not be overcome by skill or courage. Noonan's job was to place the aircraft within the radio horizon of the Itasca, within a circle of roughly 100 miles radius, a task of immense difficulty over such a long distance, and with the unpredictable currents of the tropical atmosphere. The reliance on celestial navigation was absolute. For once, they were beyond the range of coastal radio beacons. Their path was purely a construct of human intellect, a line drawn by the immutable laws of physics and astronomy. They carried on their lap a precious, single, vital strip of paper. The flight plan, a document of impossible precision, marking hourly headings and estimated ground speeds, calculating the effect of prevailing winds and the rate of fuel consumption. Every gallon a victory, every mile a prayer. But as the long day wore on, the inherent flaws in the plan began to manifest themselves. The high-frequency radio equipment, designed for long-distance communication, proved temperamental, difficult to operate while the pilots simultaneously managed the aircraft, and the reception, constantly challenged by the vast, silent spaces and the rising static of the tropical atmosphere, was intermittent and frustrating. They were talking across a chasm of air and distance, their voices often lost in the hiss and crackle of the ether. The Itasca, waiting patiently by Howland, was ready, its crew alert, but the direction-finding equipment, the technology meant to pinpoint the Electra's exact position, was proving frustratingly cumbersome and difficult to calibrate. A minor technical failing that would later swell into a tragedy of immense proportion. The day was marked by the relentless, silent work of the cockpit, the subtle adjustments to the mixture controls, the constant cross-checking of the engine instruments, the necessary, almost ritualistic transfer of fuel from the large auxiliary tanks to the main supply, maintaining the perfect equilibrium of weight and consumption. This was the quiet battle against the statistics of attrition, the fight to ensure that the delicate balance of their airborne ecosystem remained viable for the full length of the journey. The psychological pressure was an invisible, mounting force, the knowledge that beneath them lay thousands of fathoms of cold, indifferent water, the understanding that once the sun set, the sky would belong entirely to them and the distant, immutable stars. The only landmarks they could rely upon. As evening approached, Fred Noonan would be at his zenith, his skills coming into their own as the first faint starlight appeared. He would be seeking a clear view of the horizon, the sharp, defining line where the sea met the night sky. Crucial for accurate measurements with his sextant, hoping for a break in the equatorial cloud layers that often obscured the view, making his task a desperate timed dash between the meteorological forces and the needs of his chronometer, the immense, unyielding task of navigating to a target so small as Howland Island was. For Fred Noonan, the very crucible of his professional existence, his entire career, from the great marine clippers to the sleek flying boats of Pan American, had been a long preparation for this singular, most desperate moment of precision. He was a master of celestial navigation, a craft that relies not upon the unreliable signals of man, but upon the eternal, steady truth of the cosmos. The journey itself, prior to this ultimate leg, had been a grueling and spectacular triumph, crossing the breadth of continents and oceans, from the sun-drenched coast of California, eastward across the Atlantic, the great deserts of Africa, the lush, humid territories of India and Southeast Asia, each landing a momentary respite, a brief, affirming contact with the ground before the inevitable return to the endless, vibrating world of the air. Yet, with each passing mile, the cumulative wear on the machine and the relentless, creeping fatigue upon the souls within the cockpit steadily mounted, the constant drone of the engines, the subtle, pervasive scent of aviation fuel, the unending vigilance required by the complex system of auxiliary fuel transfer pumps. These contributed to a monotonous strain that was the true, unsung adversary of every long-distance flyer. By the time the Electra settled onto the remote airstrip at Lai, the weight of the entire world seemed to rest upon its metal wings. The pressure of global celebrity, the relentless reporting, the very sense of epical history that attended their every move, all contributed to a palpable, silent tension. The final preparation at La Haye was a quiet ritual of dedication, the Electra's tanks being slowly, painstakingly filled until the aircraft groaned under the burden of the thousands of gallons of high-octane gasoline, transforming it into a self-contained world of propellant and ambition. The tropical air hung heavy and still, the jungle a close, moist spectator to this final act of technological hubris and human hope. Noonan, with his sextant and his essential charts, his pencils poised over the logarithm tables, was preparing for the ultimate test of his craft, where an error of a single degree or a fleeting misreading of the chronometer could equate to a mile of deadly, irreparable deviation. The night before the departure was marked by hushed, final words, the signing of logs, the quiet, focused energy of men and women who understood the profound gravity of what was about to transpire. The final hours on the ground at Ley were the last moments of reliable certainty. the final embrace of terra firma, before the long silent suspension between the sky and the sea. And when the moment for the takeoff finally arrived. In the pre-dawn obscurity of July 2nd, 1937, the Electra heavy and sluggish required every foot of the makeshift runway, its twin engines roaring to life in a strained, powerful effort against the Earth's unyielding pull. It was a moment of profound commitment. The point of no return past the instant the wheels left the red dust, casting them loose upon the immense, empty expanse of the Central Pacific, with no option but the tiny salvation awaiting them thousands of miles distant, as the coast of New Guinea vanished beneath the low, early morning clouds. They settled into the lonely rhythm of the long haul, the ceaseless vibration, the steady, cold rush of air around the aluminum hull, the world reduced to the green glow of the instrument panel and the profound, dark silence of the ocean below. The task was now a marathon of concentration. Amelia at the controls, fighting the constant tendency of the heavily laden machine. Noonan hunched over his plotting board, translating the positions of the stars into a continuous, delicate line of flight. His was a silent, intense dialogue with the heavens, measuring the precise moment of rising and setting celestial bodies, calculating their angular height above the horizon, the only objective truth available in the trackless immensity of the sea. Imagine, if you will, a fragment of parchment, delicate and ancient, yet holding within its faded lines and intricate drawings a profound mystery that challenges our very understanding of history. Discovered in 1929 within the dusty archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, this single piece of gazelle skin parchment is no ordinary map. It is the Piri Reis Map, a world map compiled in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. We are not simply looking at a historical artifact. We are contemplating a riddle, a cartographic puzzle that has baffled scholars and captured the imagination of the world for nearly a century. This map is a testament to the quiet, meticulous labor of a brilliant mind, a document that links lost knowledge, forgotten voyages, and an enduring question about what ancient peoples truly knew about our planet. What makes this map so extraordinary? Well, for starters, it depicts the coastlines of Europe, North Africa, and Brazil with remarkable accuracy for its time. Piri Reis himself noted on the map that he compiled it from about 20 different source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, and even one captured from Christopher Columbus himself. This immediately tells us we're looking at a synthesis of knowledge, a collection of cartographic wisdom spanning centuries, possibly even millennia. It's a snapshot of a vast, interconnected world of information, much of which has since been lost to time. But the real mystery, the part that sends shivers down the spines of historians and geographers, lies at the very bottom of the map. There, sketched with surprising detail, is a landmass that strongly resembles the northern coast of Antarctica. Now, here's the puzzle. Antarctica was officially discovered in 1820. Furthermore, the landmass shown on the Piri Reis map appears to be free of its massive ice cap, which geologists believe has covered the continent for millions of years. So how could a 16th century admiral possibly map a coastline that shouldn't have been seen, let alone mapped, without its ice? This is the central enigma of the Piri Reis Map. Did ancient civilizations possess advanced knowledge of global geography? Or is there another, more conventional explanation that we've overlooked? Let's delve into the man behind the map. Piri Reis was not just some armchair mapmaker. His real name was Ahmed Mohidin Piri, and he was a celebrated admiral in the Ottoman Navy, a seasoned sailor who had navigated the treacherous waters of the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the Indian Ocean. He was a practical man of the sea, a warrior and a scholar. His magnum opus, the Kitab-ul-Bari, or Book of Navigation, was a detailed atlas of the Mediterranean, filled with precise charts and sailing instructions. It was an invaluable tool for sailors of his time. This context is crucial. Piri Reis was a meticulous professional, not a fan. When he compiled this 1513 world map, he was driven by a genuine desire to create the most accurate and comprehensive picture of the world known at the time. He explicitly states that he used a variety of sources. He mentions maps drawn in the time of Alexander the Great, which would place some of his source material in the 4th century BC. He also refers to 8 Ptolemaic maps. Maps from Arab sources. 4. Portuguese maps. And, as mentioned, a map from Columbus. This creates a fascinating lineage of information. Piri Reis was standing at the confluence of ancient, medieval, and early modern knowledge. He was an archivist and a curator of geographic data, piecing together a global puzzle from fragments passed down through generations of explorers and cartographers. His work wasn't an act of singular discovery, but an act of brilliant compilation. Now, let's circle back to that Antarctic coastline. The most prominent theory that ignited popular imagination came from Professor Charles Hapgood in his 1966 book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. Hapgood, with the help of his students, proposed that the Piri Reis map was based on even older source maps, created by an unknown, highly advanced ancient maritime civilization. He argued that this civilization had mapped the entire globe with astonishing precision long before recorded history. According to Hapgood, the depiction of an ice-free Antarctica suggested that the source map dated back to a time before the last ice age, when the continent's coast was visible. He even sent his findings to the U.S. Air Force, whose cartographers acknowledged the surprising accuracy of certain projections on the map, adding fuel to the fire. This theory is, of course, incredibly tantalizing. It speaks to our fascination with lost civilizations, like Atlantis, and the idea that our ancestors were far more advanced than we give them credit for. It paints a picture of a forgotten golden age of discovery. However, most mainstream historians and cartographers remain skeptical of Hapgood's claims. They offer alternative explanations for the mysterious southern landmass. One prominent counterargument is that the coastline isn't Antarctica at all. It could be a distorted representation of the South American coastline. Perhaps the coast of Patagonia, bent eastward to fit onto the limited space of the gazelle skin. Cartographers in the 16th century often had to get creative when trying to fit the known world onto a single sheet. Another theory suggests that it's a representation of Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. For centuries, geographers from ancient Greece onward theorized that a massive continent must exist in the southern hemisphere to balance the landmasses of the northern hemisphere. This was a purely theoretical concept, but it appeared on many maps of the era. Piri Reis, in his quest to create a complete world map, might have included a speculative drawing of this southern continent based on legends, sailors, tales, or fragments of other maps that also depicted this theoretical land. So, the coastline might not be a depiction of a real place, but rather a cartographic tradition, a placeholder for a land that was believed to exist. But what about the apparent accuracy? Skeptics point out that while some parts of the map are impressively accurate, others are wildly distorted. North America is barely recognizable, consisting of a few scattered islands. The map's projection is also inconsistent. It appears to be centered on Egypt, using a modified version of a Portolan chart projection, which was great for navigating seas, but less so for representing the entire globe accurately. These inconsistencies suggest that Piri Reis was struggling to stitch together sources with different scales, projections, and levels of accuracy. The Antarctic coastline might just be a section that, by sheer coincidence, happens to resemble a real-world feature when viewed in a certain way. It's like looking at clouds and seeing familiar shapes, a phenomenon called pareidolia. Our brains are hardwired to find patterns, and it is possible we are imposing our modern knowledge of Antarctica onto the ambiguous lines of a 500-year-old map. The debate rages on. On one side, you have the romance of a lost civilization and ancient wisdom. On the other, the more grounded, scholarly explanation of cartographic compilation, error, and coincidence. Both perspectives are compelling in their own right. What we know for sure is that only about a third of the original map has survived. The remaining fragment is what we see today. What secrets did the missing pieces hold? Did they show more of the Americas, Asia, or perhaps even more of this mysterious southern land? We may never know. The Piri Reis Map remains a powerful symbol. It challenges our linear view of history and scientific progress. It reminds us that knowledge can be lost just as easily as it is gained. It sits at the crossroads of science and speculation, history and myth. It's a testament to the human desire to explore, to understand, and to chart our place in the world. Whether it's a window into a forgotten past or a magnificent product of its time, it's 1929, Inside the Grand Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, a routine cataloging of library items uncovers something extraordinary, a section of a world map drawn on gazelle skin, dated to the Islamic year 919, which corresponds to 1513 AD. What makes this map so special? Well, for starters, it shows the coasts of West Africa, Eastern, South America, and, most controversially, a landmass at the bottom that some believe to be Antarctica, hundreds of years before it was officially discovered. But before we get lost in theories of ancient astronauts or lost civilizations, let's talk about the man behind the map. The story of its creation is, in many ways, just as fascinating as the map itself. The creator was not some obscure scholar locked away in a dusty library. He was Piri Reis, a renowned and seasoned Ottoman admiral, a veteran of countless naval battles, and a true master of the seas. Think of him as the Jack Sparrow of the Ottoman Empire, but with a PhD in geography. His life on the high seas gave him a unique advantage. He wasn't just drawing maps based on theory. He was living them. As an admiral, he had access to a treasure trove of information that few others could even dream of. His position allowed him to collect, study, and compile a vast and diverse library of source materials, creating a rich tapestry of knowledge from across the known world. He was a warrior, an explorer, and a scholar all rolled into one. What really sets Piri Reis apart is his meticulous and scholarly approach. He wasn't just copying other maps, he was synthesizing them. In a handwritten note on the map itself, he gives us a peek into his process, a testament to his academic rigor. He writes, "This map was drawn by Piri ibn Hagim, known as the nephew of Kemal Reis, in Gallipoli, in the month of Muharram of the year 919. He then goes on to list his sources, and this is where it gets really interesting. Piri Reis states that he compiled his masterpiece from over 20 different source maps. This wasn't a single aha moment, it was a painstaking process of cross-referencing and integration. Imagine him in his study, surrounded by scrolls and charts from different cultures and different eras, piecing together the world like a grand geopolitical puzzle. His sources were incredibly diverse. He mentions using ancient Greek maps dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. These would have been passed down and copied over centuries, containing geographical knowledge from the classical world. Think of the Library of Alexandria, but for maps, and Piri Reis had access to its descendants. This connection to antiquity alone is incredible, bridging the knowledge of the ancient Greeks with the age of discovery. But he didn't stop there. He also incorporated contemporary Arabic maps, which were at the time some of the most advanced in the world, particularly concerning the Indian Ocean and the coasts of Africa and India. The Islamic Golden Age had produced brilliant geographers and astronomers, and Piri Reis was standing on the shoulders of these giants. Now, for the part that truly electrifies historians. Piri Reis explicitly states that he used for newly drawn Portuguese charts. During this period, Portugal was at the forefront of naval exploration, secretly guarding their charts as state secrets. How did an Ottoman admiral get his hands on not one, but 4 of them? It speaks to the intricate web of espionage, trade, and conflict that defined the era. These Portuguese maps would have contained the latest information from voyages down the African coast and into the New World. And then there's the crown jewel of his sources, the most intriguing, the most significant, and the most debated. Piri Reis claims to have used a map drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. Let that sink in. He wrote that a Spanish sailor who had been on 3 of Columbus's voyages was captured by Piri's uncle, the famous corsair Kemal Reis. This sailor had in his possession a map drawn by the great explorer. This claim is monumental. Why? Because today, no original map created by Columbus from his voyages to the Americas is known to have survived. They are lost to history. We have his journals and letters, but the actual charts he drew, the visual records of his discoveries, are gone. This means the Piri Reis map could be our only surviving window, a direct link into what Columbus's own cartographic records might have looked like. It's like finding a lost page from Leonardo da Vinci's notebook. So, when we look at the Piri Reis map, we're not just looking at a single document. We're looking at a synthesis of knowledge spanning over 1,000 years. It's a cartographic Rosetta Stone, combining the wisdom of the ancient Greeks, the precision of Arab geographers, the cutting-edge discoveries of Portuguese explorers, and the lost work of Christopher Columbus. This collaborative nature is what makes the map both brilliant and perplexing. Piri Reis wasn't a prophet. He was an aggregator, a master compiler of data. The inaccuracies and mysteries of his map are likely the inaccuracies and mysteries of his sources. When he drew that strange southern landmass, was he copying a feature from an ancient, unknown map depicting a pre-Ice Age Antarctica? Or was he creatively stitching together the curved coastline of South America as it bent eastward? A common cartographic practice at the time to fit things onto the page. The map is a snapshot of a world in flux, a moment when the old world was colliding with the new, and knowledge was the most valuable currency. Piri Reis, with his admiral's authority and scholar's mind, stood right at the center of this collision. He took fragmented pieces of information from rivals and allies, from the ancient past and the immediate present, and wove them into a single, breathtaking vision of the world as he understood it. His work reminds us that history is not a collection of isolated events, but a continuous conversation across centuries. The map is a dialogue between Alexander the Great, Arab scholars, Portuguese captains, and Christopher Columbus, with Piri Reis acting as the moderator. It is a testament to the idea that knowledge is universal and that even in an age of conflict, information finds a way to travel across borders and empires. So, the next time you see the Piri Reis map, look beyond the conspiracy theories. See it for what it is. The work of a brilliant naval officer turned scholar, a man who navigated both the physical oceans and the seas of human knowledge, to create one of history's most enduring and fascinating documents. It's a story of scholarship, espionage, and the insatiable human quest to map our world. Have you ever seen a map that seems to defy history? A map so accurate, so detailed, that it forces us to question everything we thought we knew about the age of discovery. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most mysterious and controversial artifacts in the history of cartography, the Piri Reis Map. What secrets does this centuries-old piece of parchment hold? And could it really show lands that, according to our history books, hadn't been discovered yet? Let's find out. Our story begins in 1929, in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, Turkey. During a cataloging project, a team of scholars stumbled upon a fragment of a world map drawn on gazelle skin. The map was dated to the year 1513 and signed by a man named Piri Reis, an admiral, navigator, and cartographer of the Ottoman Empire. At first glance, it was a beautiful example of a portolan chart, a type of nautical map used by mariners of the period. But as they looked closer, they realized this was no ordinary map. The surviving fragment, which is about a third of the original, shows the western coasts of Europe and North Africa, the coast of Brazil, and various Atlantic islands with remarkable precision. The details are astonishing. Piri Reis himself wrote on the map that he compiled it from about 20 different source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, and even one supposedly captured from Christopher Columbus himself. This immediately tells us that Piri Reis was not just a map maker. He was a master intelligence officer, gathering and synthesizing information from across the known world. The part of the map that truly boggles the mind, however, is its depiction of the Americas. Remember, this map was made in 1513. Columbus had only made his first voyage in 1492, just 21 years earlier. European knowledge of the New World was incredibly sparse and often inaccurate. Yet, the Piri Reis map shows the eastern coast of South America with a level of accuracy that should not have been possible for decades, if not a full century later. The coastline bends correctly, and major rivers like the Amazon and the Rio de la Plata are clearly identifiable. How could Piri Reis, working in Istanbul, have access to such detailed information so early? This is where the mystery deepens and the theories begin to fly. Piri Reis's own notes offer a clue. He mentions using a map that Columbus had, suggesting that Columbus might have known more about the lands he was discovering than is commonly believed. Perhaps Columbus wasn't sailing into the complete unknown, but was guided by older, forgotten charts. This idea alone is fascinating, suggesting a hidden history of pre-Columbian transatlantic contact. But let's take a step further into the truly speculative. One of the most famous and debated theories about the Piri Reis map was put forward by Professor Charles Hapgood in his 1966 book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. Hapgood, a historian, argued that the map's accuracy, particularly its correct depiction of longitudes, was impossible with the technology of the 16th century. Calculating longitude accurately was a massive problem that was unsolved until the invention of the marine chronometer in the late 18th century. So, how did Piri Reis do it? Hapgood proposed a stunning hypothesis. Piri Reis' source maps were not from his contemporaries, but were copies of much older maps, created by an advanced, lost civilization from the last ice age. He believed this ancient seafaring culture had mapped the entire globe with incredible precision long before recorded history. According to Hapgood, the most controversial part of the map is what appears to be the coastline of Antarctica. Yes, Antarctica. Now, all on Antarctica was officially discovered until 1820, and it has been covered by a massive ice sheet for thousands of years. But Hapgood argued that the coastline shown on the Piri Reis map corresponds to the landmass of Antarctica, *. Underneath *, the ice. He proposed that the ancient source maps were created at a time when Antarctica was partially ice-free. This theory, if true, would rewrite human history, suggesting a highly advanced civilization existed over 10,000 years ago. It's a mind-bending idea that has captivated researchers and enthusiasts for decades. Of course, we have to look at this with a critical eye. Mainstream historians and cartographers have offered more conventional explanations. They point out that while the South American coast is impressive, it's not perfect. Some scholars suggest that the supposed Antarctic coastline is actually just the southern coast of South America, distorted and bent eastward to fit on the parchment. They argue that sailors of the time often mapped coastlines they had fully explored by drawing what they imagined might be there, based on rumors and estimations. The shape might be a coincidence, a product of creative cartography rather than ancient knowledge. Furthermore, critics of Hapgood's theory point out that the map uses a complex projection system that can create distortions, especially at the edges. When you try to reproject the Piri Reis map onto a modern globe, some of the impossible accuracies disappear, while other inaccuracies become more apparent. They contend that Piri Reis was a brilliant cartographer who skillfully pieced together the best available data of his time, which included Portuguese charts of the South Atlantic, not maps from a lost civilization. The Portuguese were secretly and meticulously mapping the South American coast during this period, and it's plausible that Piri Reis, through his intelligence network, got his hands on this cutting-edge information. But even with these more grounded explanations, the map remains a masterpiece. The artistic detail is as impressive as its geographical data. The map is filled with vibrant illustrations, notes in Ottoman Turkish, depictions of ships, rulers, and exotic animals. There are images of two-headed snakes and other mythical creatures, blending scientific observation with the rich lore and imagination of the era. It's not just a tool for navigation, it's a work of art. A snapshot of the world is seen through the eyes of a 16th century Ottoman admiral. So, what are we to make of the Piri Reis map? Is it proof of a lost civilization and a forgotten chapter of human history? Or is it the brilliant work of a Renaissance-era master, synthesizing the very latest, and perhaps secret, geographical knowledge of his time? The truth is, the debate is far from over. The map sits at the perfect intersection of history, science, and mystery. It's a puzzle with missing pieces, allowing for both rigorous scholarly analysis and wild, imaginative speculation. What this map undeniably shows us is that the world in 1513 was more connected than we often imagine. Information traveled across oceans and empires, pieced together by brilliant minds like Piri Reis. He was a product of a vibrant Ottoman culture that was a hub of knowledge, blending traditions from the East and West. The map isn't just a drawing of coastlines. It's a testament to human curiosity, the relentless drive to explore, and the art of turning scattered pieces of information into a coherent picture of the world. Whether you lean towards ancient aliens or brilliant espionage, the Piri Reis map challenges us to keep an open mind. It reminds us that history is not always a straight line and that there are still so many secrets buried in our archives, waiting to be read. It encourages us to ask questions, to look beyond the accepted narrative, and to wonder what other marvels might be hiding in plain sight. The map itself is a stunning piece of work, drawn on gazelle skin, and it shows parts of Europe, North Africa, the coast of Brazil, and various Atlantic islands. Piri Reis himself noted that he compiled it from about 20 different source maps, including some ancient ones. Even one, allegedly, from the time of Alexander the Great. Just based on its historical and artistic value, it's a treasure. It gives us this incredible window into the state of exploration and knowledge at the dawn of the 16th century. But that's not why most people know about it. Despite all its legitimate historical significance, the Piri Reis Map is most famous for its profound and enduring controversy. And this is where things get really interesting. The whole enigma, the mystery that has puzzled researchers and fueled speculation for decades, lies in the southernmost portion of the map. What you see there is a depiction of a large landmass, and for many people who have studied it, this landmass looks eerily similar to the coast of Antarctica. Now, hold on a second. Antarctica. How is that possible? The continent of Antarctica wasn't officially sighted by explorers until the 19th century. We're talking about a gap of more than 300 years between when Piri Reis created his map and when we officially discovered the frozen continent at the bottom of the world. So, how could an Ottoman admiral in 1513 possibly know what Antarctica looked like? This is the question that opens up a Pandora's box of speculation. Did ancient mariners somehow reach Antarctica long before we thought possible? Was there some forgotten knowledge passed down through the centuries that Piri Reis had access to? But the theory gets even more remarkable. The most famous proponent of this idea was a professor named Charles Hapgood. In his 1966 book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, Hapgood took the analysis a step further. He argued that the coastline shown on the Piri Reis map isn't just Antarctica. He claimed it depicts the landmass of Antarctica, asterisk. Before asterisk, it was covered by its massive ice sheet. Let that sink in. The coastline shown on the map, according to Hapgood, is the actual subglacial topography of the rock and soil beneath the ice. Modern science tells us that the Antarctic ice sheet has been in place for millions of years. But Hapgood suggested that the continent was ice-free as recently as 6,000 years ago. If he's right, it would mean that some ancient, unknown civilization had the technology and the skill to accurately map the continent of Antarctica before it was buried under miles of ice. This is a bombshell of a claim. It completely upends our entire understanding of human history and technological development. If an ancient civilization was capable of this level of global exploration and cartography, well, what are they? What happened to them? And what other knowledge might they have possessed? Hapgood's theory, as you can imagine, sparked a massive wave of speculation. It became a cornerstone for all sorts of alternative history theories. People started asking incredible questions. Was there a lost ancient civilization, like Atlantis, that possessed advanced technology? Did they have flying machines, or some other means to survey the globe with incredible accuracy? Some even took it a step further and suggested extraterrestrial influence. Could it be that the source maps Piri Reis used were not of human origin at all? Now, before we get too carried away, let's look at what the mainstream academic and scientific community has to say about all this. And, to be blunt, they are highly skeptical. Geologists and glaciologists point out that the Antarctic ice sheet is millions of years old, not thousands. The idea of an ice-free Antarctica just 6,000 years ago is not supported by any geological evidence we have. Ice core samples, sediment layers, all of it points to a very, very old ice cap. So, if it's not an ice-free Antarctica, what is it? Many historians and cartographers offer a more grounded explanation. They suggest that the supposed Antarctic coastline is actually just the southern coast of South America, probably the coast of Patagonia, which has been distorted and bent eastward to fit onto the available space of the gazelle skin parchment. In the 16th century, cartography was as much an art as it was a science. Mapmakers often had to work with incomplete or conflicting reports from sailors. They would stretch, rotate, and guess to fill in the blank spaces on their maps. It's plausible that Piri Reis, combining various sources, simply misdrew or misinterpreted the southern tip of the Americas, creating a shape that, by pure coincidence, happens to resemble the coast of Queen Maud Land in Antarctica. Furthermore, some of the annotations on the map itself seem to support this. Piri Reis wrote notes describing the region as being very hot and inhabited by large snakes. That certainly doesn't sound like the Antarctica we know. but it does sound a lot like the tropical regions of South America. But the believers in the ancient map theory have counterarguments. They point out that Hapgood's analysis was so compelling that it even got the attention of the United States Air Force. In 1960, a USAF unit that specialized in cartography reviewed his claims. Their response is often cited by proponents of the theory. They stated, in a letter to Hapgood, that his theory of the map showing Antarctica was a reasonable and logical interpretation. They agreed that the level of accuracy for that time period was surprising, and that the details shown on the map would have required aerial surveying. This military endorsement added a huge amount of fuel to the fire. If the Air Force's own map experts thought it was plausible, who were the historians to argue? However, critics point out that this letter was not an official, peer-reviewed scientific study. It was a somewhat informal response from a single officer, and it didn't represent the consensus of the entire scientific community. It's an intriguing piece of the puzzle, but it's not definitive proof. So we're left with this fascinating dilemma. On one hand, we have a rational, straightforward explanation. The map shows a distorted South American coastline, consistent with the cartographic practices of the time. This explanation fits neatly within our existing understanding of history. It requires no lost civilizations or ancient aliens. On the other hand, we have the tantalizing possibility that the map is exactly what it looks like to some. A window into a forgotten past. A past where humans, or perhaps someone else, mapped the world with a precision we thought was impossible. This theory challenges everything we think we know and opens our minds to a history that is far more mysterious and complex than what is written in our textbooks. The Piri Reis Map forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge. Is it simply a case of misinterpretation, of us seeing patterns where none exist? Or is it a genuine artifact from a lost chapter of human history? A breadcrumb left behind by a forgotten, technologically advanced civilization. The debate has raged for over half a century, and it shows no signs of stopping. Ultimately, the Piri Reis Map serves as a powerful symbol. It's a symbol of how much we still don't know about our own past. It reminds us that history is not a closed book. It's a living, breathing subject full of mysteries yet to be solved. Whether it's a fluke of 16th century map-making or a genuine ancient enigma, its power to inspire wonder and curiosity is undeniable. It challenges us to question, to explore, and to keep searching for answers. What do you guys think? Is the Piri Reis Map a simple historical document with a few quirks? Or is it proof of a lost world, of ancient sea kings who knew the globe better than we ever imagined? The argument is compelling. The coastline on some of these maps seems to eerily match the subglacial topography of Antarctica, which we've only mapped in the last century using radar and satellites. So, how could someone in the 1500s, or even earlier, have known what lay beneath miles of solid ice? The most popular alternative theory is that these maps are copies of even older source maps, passed down through generations from a long-lost seafaring civilization. Proponents of this idea, sometimes called the unscient astronauts, or lost civilization theory, suggest that humanity isn't the first advanced society to call Earth home. They believe that this earlier culture had the technology for global exploration, maybe even aerial surveys, allowing them to chart the entire planet with stunning accuracy, including an ice-free Antarctica. This idea is incredibly seductive because it opens up a world of possibilities. It paints a picture of a prehistoric golden age, a time of forgotten marvels and incredible achievements. If they could map a continent under ice, what else could they do? Build pyramids with laser-like precision, harness unknown forms of energy. It taps into that part of us that wants to believe there is more to our history than the conventional story we retold in school. It challenges the linear progression of human development and hints at cycles of rise and fall, of forgotten knowledge, just waiting to be read. The visual evidence of the maps themselves seems so powerful. You look at the Piri Reis Map, you look at a modern subglacial map of Antarctica, and the similarities can feel too strong to be a coincidence. But is that what's really going on? Before we get carried away, let's take a deep breath and look at what the experts, the historians, cartographers, and geologists who've dedicated their lives to these questions have to say. Because when we step back from the mystery and look at the evidence in a different light, a much more grounded, yet equally fascinating, picture begins to emerge. Now, let's switch gears and explore the academic consensus. While the idea of a lost, super-advanced civilization is exciting, the vast majority of historians and cartographers offer a different explanation, one that's rooted in the historical context and map-making practices of the time. The most widely accepted theory is that the landmass shown on maps like the Piri Reis Map is Antarctica at all. Instead, it's believed to be a speculative, distorted, or misinterpreted depiction of the South American coastline. Think about it from the perspective of a 16th century cartographer. Exploration was happening at a breakneck pace. Ships were returning with new, often incomplete, and sometimes contradictory information about coastlines. A mapmaker like Piri Reis was a compiler, a synthesizer of data from many different sources, some ancient, some brand new. It's highly plausible that in the process of fitting the sprawling, newly discovered South American coast onto a single piece of vellum, it got stretched, bent, and folded. The southern part of the continent might have been curved eastward on the page simply to make it fit. So, what looks like a separate continent to us today might have just been an artistic or practical solution to a spatial problem. The map's own notes describe this southern region as being hot and filled with snakes, which hardly sounds like the frigid Antarctic we know. Another major piece of the puzzle is a concept that was hugely influential for centuries: terra australis incognita, or the unknown southern land. From the time of the ancient Greeks, geographers and philosophers believed that to maintain the Earth's balance, there must be a massive continent in the southern hemisphere, to mirror the landmasses of the north. This wasn't based on discovery. It was based on a philosophical idea of symmetry and harmony. For centuries, mapmakers included this hypothetical supercontinent on their maps. They didn't know if it was there, but they believed it. Asterisk had asterisk to be. The landmass on the Piri Reis Map, complete with illustrations of mythical creatures and descriptions of a harsh, imaginary landscape, fits perfectly into this tradition of speculative geography. It was a placeholder for a continent that was yet to be discovered, a product of imagination and theory, not of empirical survey. This brings us to the science of it all. The geological evidence is overwhelming. The Antarctic ice sheet began forming over 30 million years ago, and has been a permanent feature for at least the last 15 million years. The idea that it was ice-free and habitable during any period of advanced human civilization just doesn't align with our extensive understanding of Earth's climate history, derived from ice cores, sediment layers, and fossil records. While the coastlines might have shifted slightly, the continent has been locked in ice long before any known mapmakers existed. The very notion that an ancient culture could map the topography beneath miles of ice, a feat that challenges our own modern technology, is considered incredibly improbable by the scholarly community. So, where does that leave us? Are these ancient maps less mysterious? Not at all. The real story is just as fascinating. These maps aren't a photograph of a lost world. They are a window into the mind of the past. They show us how people grappled with a world that was rapidly expanding. They reveal the incredible blend of science, myth, rumor, and philosophy that defined the age of exploration. Looking at the Piri Reis Map isn't about seeing an ice-free Antarctica. It's about seeing the struggle and genius of trying to chart the unknown. It's a human story of piecing together a puzzle with missing pieces, of filling in the blanks with both logic and imagination. The mystery isn't what's on the map, but the minds of the people who made it. Ultimately, the allure of the lost civilization theory is its simplicity and grandeur. It's a single, sweeping explanation for a complex puzzle. The academic view, on the other hand, is more nuanced. It involves understanding cartographic projection, the history of geographic ideas like terra australis, and the messy process of compiling information in an era before satellite imaging. One theory gives us ancient astronauts and a forgotten golden age. The other gives us a deeply human story of exploration, error, and the evolution of knowledge. Both are fascinating, but only one is supported by the full weight of historical and scientific evidence. The truth behind these maps isn't about a forgotten paradise of ice, but about our own ancestors' incredible and flawed attempts to make sense of their world. In the bustling city of Istanbul, a team of historians is working to catalog the vast collection of the Topkapi Palace, the former heart of the Ottoman Empire. Tucked away in a dusty corner, they stumble upon a fragment of a world map, drawn on gazelle skin. The date on the map is 1513. The signature belongs to an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri Reis. At first glance, it's a beautifully crafted artifact of its time, but as they look closer, they realize something is astonishingly, impossibly wrong. The map shows the coastlines of Europe, North Africa, and Brazil with remarkable accuracy, but it also depicts something else. Something that, according to our history books, shouldn't be there. So, who was this Piri Reis? Born Ahmet Muhyiddin Piri, he was a highly respected figure in the Ottoman Navy during the 16th century. He was more than just a sailor. He was a scholar, a geographer, and a master cartographer. In his notes, Piri Reis explains that he didn't create this map from his own explorations alone. Instead, he compiled it from about 20 different source maps. He writes, "I have used about 20 old charts in Mapi Mundi, maps drawn in the days of Alexander, Lord of the Two Horns, which showed the inhabited quarter of the world. One of his most intriguing sources, he claims, was a map captured from a Spanish sailor who had sailed with Christopher Columbus on his voyages to the New World. This immediately connects his work to the very epicenter of the Age of Discovery. Now, let's get to the heart of the mystery. The map shows the eastern coast of South America, which is impressive enough for 1513. But as you travel further south on the map, you see a landmass that looks eerily like the coast of Antarctica. Here's the kicker. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, nearly 300 years after Piri Reis drew his map. And even more mind-boggling, the map seems to depict the coastline of Antarctica without its ice cap . We're talking about land that has been buried under a mile-thick sheet of ice for thousands, if not millions, of years. How could a 16th century admiral possibly know what the continent looked like beneath the ice? This single detail has fueled decades of debate and spawned some truly wild theories. In the 1960s, a professor named Charles Hapgood published a book called Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. Hap, supported by none other than Albert Einstein, proposed a radical idea. He argued that the Piri Reis map was based on source material from a much older, highly advanced, but now lost, ancient civilization. He believed this prehistoric society had mapped the entire globe with incredible precision long before the rise of Egypt or Greece. He theorized that a catastrophic event, a sudden pole shift, wiped out this civilization but left behind fragments of their knowledge, like the maps Piri Reis eventually used. It's a sensational theory, one that sounds like it's straight out of a blockbuster movie. Hapgood's theory relies on the idea that the map uses a sophisticated projection method centered near modern-day Cairo, which allowed it to represent a spherical Earth on a flat surface, with minimal distortion of feet thought to be beyond the capabilities of 16th century cartography. Proponents of this theory point to the map's stunning accuracy in depicting longitudes, a problem that was unofficially solved by European navigators until the late 18th century with the invention of the marine chronometer. So, did Piri Reis have access to lost, ancient technology? Was he the heir to a secret knowledge passed down through millennia? Before we get carried away, let's look at what mainstream historians and cartographers have to say. They offer a much more grounded, though no less interesting, perspective. Skeptics argued that the supposed depiction of Antarctica is likely a combination of guesswork and cartographic tradition. In the 16th century, it was common for mapmakers to imagine a large southern continent, often called Terra Australis Incognita, or the unknown southern land, to balance the land masses of the northern hemisphere. They believe that what looks like the Antarctic coast is probably just a speculative drawing of the southern tip of South America, distorted and stretched eastward to fit on the parchment. Furthermore, they point out several significant errors on the map. The Caribbean islands are misplaced, and some are depicted twice. The Amazon River is shown with two mouths. While the map is remarkably good for its time, it's far from perfect. These inaccuracies, they argue, are consistent with the knowledge and limitations of early 16th century European and Ottoman explorers. They suggest that Piri Reis was uncopying a perfect ancient blueprint, but was brilliantly piecing together the best available information of his day, which was often fragmented, contradictory, and filled with sailors' tall tales. The map wasn't proof of a lost civilization, but a masterpiece of contemporary intelligence gathering and synthesis. So, we have two competing narratives. On one side, a thrilling story of a lost super-advanced civilization whose knowledge miraculously survived through a single map. On the other, a more sober tale of a brilliant Ottoman admiral who created a state-of-the-art map by synthesizing the cutting-edge, albeit flawed knowledge of his time. Where do you land? The beauty of the Piri Reis Map is that it has just enough accuracy to make you wonder, and just enough ambiguity to keep the debate alive. It sits in that fascinating gray area between known history and tantalizing mystery. But let's not forget the man himself. Piri Reis was not just some dreamer drawing fantasy lands. He was a practical man of the sea, a military commander whose maps had real-world implications for trade, navigation, and naval warfare. His life's work, a book, Khaled Kitab Bari, or Book of Navigation, was a detailed atlas of the Mediterranean, filled with port-to-land charts, sailing directions, and information about coastal towns. This was a man dedicated to the pursuit of accurate, useful knowledge. His map wasn't an academic exercise. It was a tool, an intelligence document of the highest order. Tragically, Piri Reis's story doesn't have a happy ending. At Anoldahe, he was executed by the Ottoman Sultan for political reasons, following a failed naval campaign. His incredible map, or what was left of it, was then lost to history for nearly 400 years, waiting to be rediscovered in that palace archive. Imagine what other secrets might have been on the missing portions of the map, which is believed to have originally shown the entire world. Regardless of the controversies and academic debates, the Piri Reis Map remains a powerful and profoundly moving historical document. It is a testament to the immense intellectual curiosity and the vast network of knowledge that existed centuries before our age of instant information. It reminds us that the story of human discovery is a complex web of interconnected knowledge, shared across cultures and continents. The quiet, meticulous work of Piri Reis, the Ottoman admiral, created a legacy that, even in its fragmented state, continues to challenge and inspire us. Today, the surviving piece of the map is housed in the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul. It's a silent, enduring testament to the power of a single document to hold a timeless mystery. It invites us to contemplate the untold stories still hidden in the annals of history. It's a powerful reminder that our understanding of the past is a continuously evolving puzzle, and new pieces can be found in the most unexpected of places. The Piri Reis Map doesn't just show us the world as it was known in 1513. It shows us the limitless possibilities of what might have been known, and what may still be left to discover. Thank you so much for joining me on this historical detective journey. What do you think? Was Piri Reis channeling ancient knowledge, or was he simply the greatest geographer of his time? Let me know your theories in the comments below, and if you enjoyed unraveling this mystery, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the enigmas of our past. See you next time.